Okay, so what I'm going to talk to you about, I don't have a PowerPoint because I have lofty hopes for my own riveting presentation skills. And so what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is first of all, what is the Family Matters Clinic? What is it? What does it ask of the participants in it? What's the point of it? And then we'll talk a little bit about the ethics of representing LGBTQ families, regardless of whether you are participating in the Family Matters Legal Clinic or not. So the Family Matters Legal Clinic is really the brainchild of originally of Cynthia, who last year coordinated a second parent adoption clinic that helped several families, including Andy Lyons' family that you heard about earlier today, to get second parent adoptions. And this year we got additional funding from King County, basically to provide legal security to LGBTQ families, and we purposefully wanted to make it really broad because we wanted to address the changes in the Uniform Parentage Act and not just do second parent adoptions or third parent adoptions, but really open it up to the kinds of parentage orders that all kinds of different families might need. And so, you know, one of the core values that I bring to my work with the LGBTQ community is that we are a super diverse community. You know, my family structure is, you know, where I'm the birth parent to my child and my partner is a trans man. Like, we're pretty boring in terms of how LGBT family structure goes. And, you know, we're pretty run of the mill. And so what we really wanted to do was create a space for families that are a little bit more outside of the norm and outside of what has already been legally contemplated, and who are not able to get ready access to services, and not able necessarily to find family law attorneys or afford family law attorneys that are going to understand the full complexity of their relationships, right? Our community has been making families for as long as we have existed, which is to say forever. And what that means is that there's people who are biological parents, there's people who are chosen parents, there's people who are, you know, functionally step parents, but have never been identified as a step parent because of the way that the family structures have been. There's people who are third or fourth parents. There are people who are technically donors, but who have a parental capacity. And the reason that legal designation matters, right, a lot of times our community looks at this and is like, well, why are we buying into this system, right? Like, why even bother going to a court to have some stranger in a black robe tell you that your family is okay? And the reason for that is that legal parentage documents don't matter on the best day of your life, right? They don't matter on the day that they're signed, and they don't matter on the day that your kid is born. They matter on the worst day of your life, when some homophobe in a hospital doesn't want to let you in or wants to put your kid into state custody because you're not biologically related to them and something horrible has happened to their biological parent, right? They matter on the day that you and your partner are splitting up and you're worried about whether the court is going to recognize your role in the family. And so that's why, that was really kind of the impetus for why we wanted to expand the second parent adoption clinic into more forms of parentage orders and to more kinds of families. And King County was really generous and funded us a $50,000 grant to make that happen for 30 families over the course of the next 18 months. So we will, in August, be having our first clinic with families. And we're in the process of recruiting families who need this kind of legal support now. And so for, you know, I will go ahead and email everybody who registered for this, regardless of whether you said you were interested in volunteering for the clinic or not, because hopefully after learning all of this information, you will be interested. And also, it's also something that we will have these recordings available in the future, so that if folks were not able to make it today but are really interested in being involved, they can get this training and be part of our clinic as well. So let's see. So the nuts and bolts are 30 King County families over the next 18 months, and over the course of 3 clinical cycles, right? So the way that this will work logistically is for attorneys, you will come to the clinic, whichever one of the 3 that you can make, and be paired with a client family. You will have information about that client family because when they register for that clinic, we have a questionnaire that asks them lots of information about their family. It's certainly not as in-depth or invasive as what the social worker questions are, right? It's not, I didn't take it verbatim from that, but it's more like, tell us who we're talking about here, right? Who are your people? And what's the relationship that these people have to the kids? How old are the kids? What does your family look like? And from there, you'll have a profile of what your family will look like, and probably at that point, a pretty solid idea of, is this a, definitely adoption family? Is this a maybe de facto parentage family? Or is this just a family who needs a legal rubber stamp and a document that they can pull out on the worst day of their life? Which is some version of a confirmation of parentage. And then you'll meet with your family, probably do a lot of the initial paperwork at that clinic. And then depending on what type of order your family is going for, you will either, be able to set an appointment relatively quickly to go in and get the order completed if it's one of these confirmations where you can kind of do it ex parte like we talked about at the beginning of the day. If it's something a little bit more in-depth, like a de facto or an adoption, then you'll have some time to do the paperwork and coordinate with an attorney, or excuse me, a social worker for the home study. And so that's kind of the gist of it. We do have a structure set up so that you'll do bi-weekly check-ins with me. Bi-weekly means every other week. Doesn't mean twice a week, just for clarification. And that can just be like, yep, still waiting for the family to connect with the social worker, or it can be like, yep, we filed the thing and, nothing is happening right now, like our hearing date is X or whatever. The really crucial thing for you to know about this is that first of all, the clients are not responsible for any of the court fees. QLaw pays for those through our grant. So we will do some coordinating on how to make sure that those get paid effectively and without you having to, for example, like front it and then get reimbursed, because that's not always possible, particularly for people who are solos. I was a solo for 2.5 years, I get it. And the other important thing to know, and I'll kind of walk through this in some more detail, is that both attorneys and social workers, provided you have your own malpractice insurance, can get paid for your work with these client families. So that's an important thing to know. And again, that's why we wanted to make sure that these are available online. The trainings, are available online so that that opportunity is open and available even if folks were not able to make it on this particular day. So that's the training. We'll probably do another in-person training sometime in early 2020, like February-ish. The 3 clinical cycles are essentially starting in August and will run through about December, depending on the client needs. And then we'll do another one in about January, February, and then another one in about mid-2020. And aiming to help about 10 client families at each of them. Some of it is going to depend on, I think it'll probably just, as I'm sort of eyeballing this, I think it'll probably be a little lighter in this first round. And then as the publicity sort of amps up a little bit, we'll probably get more requests in 2020. Let's see. So what you have in the back of your materials, and if you wouldn't mind just kind of following along with me, is a policies and procedures manual. Hang on to this because this is kind of a guiding document. And looking at the let's see, the second page with the representation and adjudication. What I wanted to say about that, I'm actually just going to close this so I can use this. What I wanted to say about representation is that, you know, and I'm just going to say it and, you know, hope that everybody hears it in the loving spirit in which it is intended. Sometimes pro bono and low bono projects don't get taken quite as seriously as our regular work. And so I just want to say, like, one of the, you know, we'll talk a little bit about the values of the attorney-client and relationships with families in just a second, but I do just want to, like, make really clear that representation in this context, even though you are learning while you go, even though this may be something that you're doing in addition to your day job, really does need to be a client relationship just like any other client relationship. So something that you take as seriously as any other client relationship. And that maintaining communication and things like that with clients is going to be really key. Let's see, adjudication. Basically, like, when's the hearing going to be? I would really love for us to do kind of what happened in the first clinic, which was a beautiful day arranged with Judge Spector, right, Cynthia? Yeah, a beautiful day with Judge Spector where everybody kind of came and did it all at the same time. And it was like just a really nice sort of team atmosphere. And I would love to replicate that as much as possible. Now, you know, if your client family is like, look, I just want to get this sucker done, then, you know, we'll work that out and we don't have to have, like, you know, a big shebang, right? We can just kind of make it happen. But we may also, particularly if we have, like, you know, 5 adoptions on the same day or something like that, that does sort of keep things moving. So talking about the standards and client rights, again, this is something that's just really important to me. In the context of pro bono and low bono work, you know, I've been working with QLaw Foundation and the LGBT Legal Clinic for about 10 years. And so I really, and in my 10 years of practice, I really have started to connect really deeply with the values that come with client relationships. Our community does not have an easy relationship with the legal world. You know, LGBTQ folks have not typically been able to access safe legal services, and negative experiences travel way, 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 way farther than positive experiences. Because, you know, we do just have to kind of keep back of mind that the LGBTQ community has only had laws and policies about us fairly recently in the last, you know, 20-ish to 50-ish years. You know, go back farther than 20 years, and most of the laws about us were things that made our lives illegal. And so it's not a particularly warm and fuzzy relationship, and we're very used to community connections and community education and community-based advocacy. So people will, for example, they don't think to themselves independently, ooh, I better go look up and see if I need a second parent adoption or a parentage order. They're gonna, like, hear from their friend or their, like, queer buddy in their queer parents group that, like, oh, this is a thing that we did. And that means that if somebody says, I went to the QLaw Family Matters Clinic and my attorney was a jerk and never returned my emails and I didn't understand anything that was happening, that means that all of our work is damaged, right? Because that goes a lot farther than they were fantastic and awesome and I love them forever, right? Like, we tend to tell bad stories more than we tell good stories. So I really want us to keep, as we move forward with this, keep our clients front of mind and keep the humans that are in these processes front of mind, because we are all just human beings trying to figure out our way through a big bureaucratic system. So just a quick rundown of what the client understandings are. Anybody who participates in this clinic as an attorney, as supportive legal staff, as a law student, as a social worker, needs to be able to commit to following the rules of professional conduct and, you know, or whatever the equivalent rules are with NASW for social workers. And will receive ethics training specific to this context. So that's what we're doing today. Be trained on competency related to LGBTQ families, histories, and multiply marginalized identities. Again, congratulations, check, you did it. And the clients will have QLaw Foundation contact information. I mean, obviously they're going to have your contact information too, but we do just want to make sure that, you know, that the foundation is looped in so that there aren't things that are happening that maybe need attention or where you may need some assistance and that's not being communicated. So, so we really want to, you know, I really would like the foundation to have a really active and engaged role with our client families and with you all as you're working with them so that nobody feels like they are on an island sort of laboring in obscurity, right? Nobody likes to feel that way. So we're a team, and the foundation is part of that team. And then the last two are kind of the most important. All representation will be client-centered and client-directed. From the core value that families come in all forms, that marginalized and minoritized parents bring strength to children and families, and that clients seeking parentage rights are already parents in the eyes of their children. So we have to remember that these are families that are already existing and familying, doing their thing. And what we are here to do is to help them make sure that they have the order that they need to bust out in the event that something terrible happens, in the event that their relationship ends, so that there is legal structure and safety around the relationship that already exists. Because the relationship, no matter what happens in their experience with our clinic, their relationship with their children and their children's relationship with them is not going anywhere. And then the last one, the last sort of the client rights is clients have the right to make informed decisions about their case. They have the right to contact the attorney that they're working with or the social worker that they're working with at any time and get a prompt response. And they also, just like any other attorney-client or social worker relationship, they can withdraw at any time that they want to. These are not necessarily guidelines that, I mean, I think they're important, but they are also guidelines that we are ethically bound to follow as attorneys. And we'll talk more about those ethics in just a second. So looking at the participant types, so there's three options for participation, sort of three main options for participation. One is participating as a pro bono attorney. Now, this is an option that's available if you want to receive CLE credit for your participation time. We are a qualified legal services provider through WSBA, so that means that you can get CLE credit for your representation work. It also means that you are covered by QLaw Foundation's malpractice insurance. So this is the option that you take if you work somewhere where your malpractice insurance would not cover your attorney-client relationship with this family. You may be partnered with a law student or legal staff to help you out, and that relationship can look a lot of different ways depending on who those people are. You can request a mentor attorney, right? Like I said earlier, when in the 10 years I practiced family law, I never did anything right the first time, usually the second time, not always, right? And asking questions is super important, right? These are not, if these were easy legal processes, we wouldn't be here. And so it's not like, if you have questions or you have something that you're not sure how to handle, it doesn't mean that you didn't do enough research. It means that this is a weird situation and probably somebody else who does this full time has encountered it. And so we can absolutely connect you with those folks. Most of the presenters here, as a matter of fact, are people who have said that they're willing to be mentor attorneys. So, so that's totally doable. And even as a pro bono attorney, you're still bound by all of the representation expectations that would follow if this was a client who you had a private pay relationship with. The second classification of people who can participate is a low bono attorney. Now, this is somebody who can get paid for their representation work, and there's a lower amount for an easy one, confirmation or acknowledgement of parentage, higher amounts for de facto or adoption. If you have strong feelings about which one you do, let me know and I can try and pair you up with client families who have particular needs. The big big catch is that you have to be able to show us that you have malpractice insurance that covers your representation, because this client will effectively be, you would effectively have a co-counsel relationship between the foundation and your own firm or yourself as an employer, or excuse me, yourself as an attorney. So like you, and our malpractice insurance will not cover you. Our malpractice insurance only covers attorneys who are volunteering for us, who are working for free. So if you want the low bono option, you have to show me that you have malpractice insurance, because it's all of our heinies on the line. And also CLE credit hours do not apply if you're getting paid to do it. So I don't care which way you want to go. I don't care how many we have of either category. I just want our clients to be served. And so I will be working with folks. And at the end of this, I have a commitment sheet for folks who are wanting to do this clinic and work on it, so that I can kind of get a sense of where everybody falls. And then we can follow up and talk in more detail about your particular situation. And then the third category of participants is social workers. Social workers can get paid a low bono fee for their placement reports. And unless you know of a policy through NASW to get continuing education credits that I don't, we can't do that for actually performing the duties. And you have to have your own malpractice insurance coverage. If that's a giant barrier, talk to me, because I just don't know that world quite as well as I know the attorney world. So it's very possible that we have routes to, good solutions there that I just haven't thought of. Let's see. Some of the basic stuff like accounting policies is pretty self-explanatory. Just, we will, QLaw Foundation covers all of the court fees, and again, covers the low bono rates, and we just have to have invoices and agreements that specify that. Client records, you are in charge of maintaining the client records while you're representing the client. We will maintain our own independent file, and at the closure of your case, we need to get the entire file from you, or a copy of the entire file from you. And just because, again, it's effectively a co-counsel relationship between QLaw Foundation as a law firm and you as an attorney. Let's see. Law student participation. Law students are welcome to participate. Whether law students have Rule 9 status or not depends, will dictate how much law students can do. But as, for licensed attorneys, you may get paired with a law student, and you can feel free to ask them to do a bunch of the work and a bunch of the pleadings and stuff like that, obviously within reason, don't be an asshole. But it's a really great opportunity for law students to be able to get client contact. And a really great resource also. Yeah. And then let's see, then we have attorney mentorship and assistance that we already talked about. So that is effectively the policies and procedures for this clinic. Before I move into the ethics portion, does anybody have questions about that? Yes. Mm-hmm. So the question is, if you're a licensed in-house counsel only, do you need to be partnered with a family law practice attorney? Is that sort of what you're asking? Oh, somebody licensed in Washington? Yes. You do need to be licensed in Washington in order to independently handle the case. Mm-hmm. So as long as you have a valid WSBA number, then I don't care how you got it. Does that make sense? Okay, and we can definitely talk about that more. I think that again, as long as you've got a WSBA number, then I don't think it matters at all to the bar, because, and we'll talk about the competency rules in just a minute, but those are those are the rules that would apply. And as long as that's something that, as long as the competency is being followed, then I think we're good. What's that? Only if you want to get paid. So the question was, if you're in-house, do you have to partner to get malpractice insurance? And the answer is only if you want to get paid. If you are willing to do it pro bono, then our insurance covers. Okay, so turning to the RPCs, on the page that is entitled Important Ethical Rules, I'm going to talk for just a second about competence, and you all are very smart people and can read the RPCs on your own, as scintillating as they are. And so for the purpose of all of us not falling asleep, I put at the bottom of each RPC the application of the RPC in this context. So for RPC 1.1, which is competence, that effectively means like know enough about the topic to know what you don't know, and don't do stuff that you haven't researched. You have to, in order to stay within the bounds of this RPC, you have to have the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for representation. What that effectively means is like, I took the bar exam 10 years ago. Do I remember what was on it? Not even for one hot minute, right? So what it means is that you have to be at least aware enough of the topic to know kind of how big the universe is and how much of that universe you haven't charted yet, right? For some of you, that's going to be most of it, and that's okay. For some of you, you're going to know that universe pretty well, but you may encounter a wrinkle that you haven't encountered before. That's also okay. And that's part of why I really have, why we have mentor attorneys, and it's part of why we have this training, and it's part of why we have sort of a team-oriented approach to this, because this is complicated stuff. Nobody knows everything about everything, and that's okay. So, don't worry even if you walk out of here today and you're like, gosh, if I had a client in front of me right now who said, do I need a de facto parentage order or a second parent adoption? I would not know the answer to that question. That's okay, right? Because you will research that when the time comes up. Just make sure that you have enough time in your schedule and enough capacity in your brain to put that information in there and to be able to find the answer to the question when it comes time. RPC 1.2 is about the scope of representation. Really, the reason I care about this one is what it says about, in that first sentence, that a lawyer shall abide by a client's decisions concerning the objectives of representation and shall consult with the client as to the means by which they are to be pursued, right? Really what I care about is that part of what we're teaching and part of what the clinic exists to do is to create relationships between attorneys and clients that are meaningful and to help clients feel empowered with information, right? Like most of us can think of a time in our life when we were presented with a problem that was really dear to us and we didn't know what the answer to that problem was. We didn't know what the path was to solve that problem. And it's a really scary situation, and it happens to lawyers just like it happens to anybody else, right? Sometimes it happens to lawyers about legal things, and just like it happens to anybody else. And I'll tell you, for example, I'm not a landlord-tenant attorney, but I had a landlord who was doing some really borderline, we'll call it, stuff. And it was really terrifying. And I had to go get a landlord-tenant attorney to help me understand what the scope of the problem was, because all I felt was afraid, right? So our client families, obviously they're not like living in terror, right? But our client families don't have the information they need to feel safe and to feel like their legal relationship with their child is safe. And so what we are doing is giving them the information that they need in order to feel safe. So that's really the core for the core value for this particular point of professionalism, is that, it's not just that you have the magic information in your brain and you can like make stuff happen for them. It's also that you can take that magic information in your brain and translate it for them so that they understand what the decision is that they're making about their family. Does that all make sense? Okay. Sometimes I get a little like charged up about this stuff and I like start speaking a little abstractly. So if you're like, that all sounds great, Denise, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about, just tell me. That's okay. Okay, so 1.3 diligence. This essentially just says, essentially what it means is don't commit to do something you don't actually have time to do. Like, and if you get halfway through this and you're like, well, this other thing just exploded and I don't have time to do that anymore, just say that. It's really okay. It's really, really okay. I promise, right? Like fake yeses are so much worse than real no's. And so it's just important that our clients have continuity and that our clients get the attention that they need. And so it doesn't mean that this has to be the only thing that you do, but it does mean that it has to be something that is part of your to-do list and is active in your to-do list. And if it's not something you can make time for, then don't. It's totally okay. We'll figure it out. Let's see. And then, 1.4, communication. This one is just about staying in touch with your client. And again, that's why one of the baseline expectations that we have is a biweekly check-in. And that means that your client should be hearing from you approximately every 2 weeks, even if it's just an email that says, hey, nothing's happening. Don't worry. It's cool. Because they're not going to want to press on your time. This is something that I've learned in 10 years of private practice, is that when something has fallen to the bottom of my to-do list and I haven't talked to my client in a month or so, they know. And they're just kind of like, they don't want to bug me and they assume that I'm busy, but they're kind of worried and they start to feel like they have moved to the bottom of my to-do list, right? And that's not a great feeling that you want to have when we're talking about a parent's relationship with their kid. So it's totally fine to stay in touch and just say, nothing is happening, I don't have any new information. But what we don't want is for clients to feel like they were lost track of. Additionally, honestly, clients are less likely to bug you with a bunch of questions if they feel like they can get questions answered in a timely way. It's sort of a like virtuous cycle that way. Like the more information that you can give clients, the less they actually feel like they have to pepper you with, if that makes sense. And then the last one, I really truly have saved the best for last, is confidentiality. So our community is the size of a kiddie pool, right? So like, for example, if you were to like walk into, I don't know, the Wild Rose, we'll say, let's make it a Saturday night because, it's empty right now, I bet. And you were to say, hey, I know an attorney who's been practicing for about 10 years, has brown hair and does employment and family law and a bunch of gay stuff. It would probably, like, you could probably safely get within 2 or 3 degrees of me, right? Like, you really could. I know that this sounds egotistical and I'm using myself as an example on purpose, but it really does happen, right? Like, and we all kind of run in the same circles, like, definitely been out at social stuff and run into clients or former clients, and, friends of former clients, opposing parties, opposing counsel, right? Like our community is very small. So what that means is that when you're talking about your client family, keep it not just confidential, like, don't use their names, but confidential, like talking about the family structure, talking about people's professions, talking about what their choices are in their family. And it's not just because we want to keep it confidential, but also because it's like kind of not anybody's business, whether somebody's getting a de facto parentage order or an adoption or anything else. And again, we do all tend to know each other. It's a really small community. And it really, like, I remember working on an employment case, and I had a photo up in my office in a really not prominent location, and another from a second parent adoption I had done, and it wasn't particularly confidential, but somebody else walked in and was like, oh, I know that guy. I work with that guy. And I was like, So, you know, it's just very small. Keep information tight. Everybody needs to vent about their case, about their client, about their family. Everybody, you know, I promise you, we all do. And I just want to invite you that if you have something that you need to talk about, or if you learn a detail about a family where you're just like, holy shit, that's the most badass thing I've ever heard, right? Or if you hear something about your client family and you're like, that's completely new to me, I don't know anything about this, and you need a place to put that information, like, we're all human beings. We all have that need. It's real. I just want to invite you, you can call and tell me because it will go into the vault, right? We need to be a vault about our community members because this is their family structures. So I take this like way more seriously than the RPCs do because the RPCs are talking about the world at large and I'm looking at a community that is like this big. So that's my big preachy speech about confidentiality. Don't say anything to anybody. If you have something that you really need to say, some salacious detail, I will always hear it and then I will lock it up. So, yes, Cynthia.
Do we have to be? I already know the answer to this question, but you know, we do have a picture of the families that we adopted last year on our materials and on, I don't know if we have it on the web or Facebook or not, but we can get permission from people to do those sorts of things, and I have done that and did that for that particular thing.
Yes, that is why, like, for example, when I asked at the beginning of the day, is it okay if I take people's photos and put it on social media? It's because I do want to be really careful about permission. And I'm training myself. Again, I had permission to have that family's photo in my office, thank goodness, since some other rando came in and happened to know them. So, so yeah, and we will be doing some, you know, our client materials will have some, you know, check boxes for like, yes, it's okay to use my photo. No, it's okay. You know, it's not okay. And that's all, you know, that's all fine. But when you're talking to your families outside of that context, it's just what I don't want is for information to be shared and inadvertently get back to our clients that their confidentiality was not honored, because this is all sticky stuff. And even if it doesn't feel like a big deal to us, it does often feel like a really big deal to our clients. So particularly when we're talking about people are not rational about their kids, and that's okay, they shouldn't be. And just remember we're talking about people's kids. Yeah, John.
Oh, one thing I would like to add about clients and our small community is I've often had the problem of being in a public place and I see someone and maybe I'm with my family or friends, or maybe they're with family or friends. And what do? Do I say hello or not? Am I being rude if I don't say hello? And over the years, what's worked well is if they acknowledge you and come to you and speak to them, then you go. But if they see you and they look away, that's it, you know, and that works well. And it took me years to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a good point, particularly like yeah, that's a very good skill, particularly if you forget, like I often forget to ask my clients, how do you want to handle this? Which I think therapists do much more frequently in terms of, you know, my therapist said, hey, my office is close to your office. What if we run into each other getting coffee? What do you want? I was like, oh, that's a really great question. So I started asking my clients that question too. And it's really helpful, particularly if you ever go to a Pride thing, because, you know, Pride is like a who's who of my clients and former clients. So any other questions? Any other concerns? Anything you just want to say because it's on your mind? Great. Okay, well, it is 2:56. You are officially done. Make